ladies and gentlemen. This is Jeff Rains again, coming to you with Foundation of Civilization. This is my weekly rundown of news events that I find significant across the world. Please like, share, and subscribe. Really helps me out to get the message out to what's going on around the world. This week it is March 1st, 2025. In the world markets, West Texas crude oil ended at $69.76 a barrel. Brent was at $73.18 a barrel. The OPEC basket was ended at $74.98 a barrel. Gold settled a little bit this past week at 2,857.93 cents. Silver was at $31.17. And a bit of good news: the Baltic dry goods exchange rose this week, and this signified and it settled. It ended up at $1,229, and this is good news because that means that the markets are feeling a little healthier, and the goods, the people are willing to pay a little bit more to get their goods to markets. As far as military and naval deployments go, aircraft flights continues to suggest a significant presence over northern Mexico and the southern United States. Naval deployments. The USS America has put to port in Okinawa after running exercises in, I believe, the Philippine Sea. The USS George Washington remains in Yokosuka, Japan. The USS Carl Vinson is in the Philippine Sea to participate for an exercise Pacific Stellar 2025. Last report, the USS Abraham Lincoln was in its home port of San Diego, California. The USS Harry Truman has departed Suda Bay, Greece, and is making repairs after the accident from last week. For those of you who did not hear, the Truman impacted had an impact with a cargo carrier. The USS Nimitz returned to Bremerton, Washington, and the USS Iwo Jima departed Norfolk, Virginia. And last report, USS Ronald Reagan departed Bremerton, Washington, and no word on its whereabouts at the moment. The USS Tripoli was last report was at its home port in San Diego. The USS Wasp uh, was in Norfolk, Virginia. The USS George H.W. Bush was at last report conducting operations in the Eastern Atlantic, and the USS Gerald R. Ford was had returned to Norfolk, Virginia also. In Europe, the DAX was at 22,551.43. The FTSE was at 8,809.74. The CAC 40 was at 8,111.63, and the IBEX was at 13,347.30. Now, an interesting development with elections in Germany. The leader of the Conservative Party, Friedrich Merz, maneuvered the party to win the elections. Eh, Although I want to make sure that people understand that a European conservative is not the same as an American conservative. Although sometimes I think that a lot of that is just semantics, but he, the Conservative Party, his Conservative Party, garnered the greatest number of votes, but they did not win over 50% of the votes. So he's going to have to form a coalition government. As is custom for European politicians, uh, apparently, maybe even before the votes were finally tallied, he changed his position. Uh, One of the biggest policy positions was on immigration. A lot of Europeans, and especially Germans, are questioning their current immigration policies because they've had a significant number of attacks by recent immigrants. During the election cycle, he claimed he was going to close the border, and now he's decided that he's going to keep it open. This election also showed that a greater number of young people are reaching towards the far ends of the spectrum, both to the left and to the right. This election saw more people voting for those political extremes. The right wing party, the Alternative for Deutschland, for Germany, Alternative for Germany party, won the second highest number of votes at 20%, which actually doubled the previous number of seats. They're actually in a good position for power, but as politics tends to go in Europe, the conservatives will likely pull in other parties to build a coalition government. And that will usually drive very little useful change for the citizens itself. Now, something I thought was of note is that the Germany's Merz vowed independence from the United States, especially as military affairs go. He warned that NATO may soon be dead. NATO. Now, I also want to remind people that NATO was established to deter the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union is no more. And the current state of Russia is nothing like the former Soviet Union. Former Soviet Union, I think, they have 400 million people. Current Russia has about 160 million people. Now, the Germany and much of the rest of Europe are seeing they need to take a greater stand in their own defense, European defense. This is going to be a difficult, seeing as how Germany's economy is struggling. Many German people, workers, are retiring, and there are not enough workers to replace them. They're, well, I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to have to come up with something. Their consumer climate index dropped to 24.7 heading into March 2025. And it's been declining for the past, for this is the second consecutive month that it's declined. One of the problems like I noted, overshadowing the elections in Germany was violence, and Germany has seen several knife and vehicle attacks recently. And as Germany tries to enter Carnival, there it's being overshadowed by Islamic State terror threats. France also saw a recent Islamic attack. The president of France, Macron, condemned the deadly Mole House attack in the Alsace region of eastern France. One person was killed and several others were injured. I noted in the past that in the Baltic region, the Baltic nations are keeping an eye on Russia and Russian ships and Russian associated ships. They're dropping they're dropping their anchors and damaging sea cables in the Baltic Sea. Well, they're being aided by U.S. Marines who have brought drones so they can help to keep an eye on these ships. This week, Russian forces retook 4 villages in the Kursk region, and an additional number of North Korean troops joined Russia in their fight against Ukraine. In an interesting development, the U.S. president says that the Russian president is ready to accept European peacekeepers. Now, we just have to get Ukraine to agree, and Ukraine this week initially agreed to uh, a deal on the rare earth metals that are in Ukraine. That was before a blow up in the White House as Ukrainian president argued with the U.S. president and vice president. Now, it's unclear where the agreement stands now. I will note that the Ukrainian president, he's in a bit of a pickle because the the mines that he's trying to make a deal with, 70% of them of the rare earth metal mines are in regions that are controlled by Russia, and most of those regions are ethnically Russian. Over in Asia, the markets, the Nikkei was at 37,155.50. The SSE index was at 3,320.90. The Hang Seng Index was at 22,941.32. The BSE Sensex was at 73,198.10. The Nifty 50 was at 22,124.70. The largest ever heist. North Korea stole $1.5 billion. North Korean agents were able to break into an exchange in Dubai and steal cryptocurrency, which well, that gets into a bunch of cybersecurity stuff that I don't know a lot about. But they biggest heist so far. Keep your eyes on that though, because I expect that that's going to rise in the near future. In Afghanistan, the U.S. Secretary of State noted that there is growing concern over extremists operating in the ungoverned regions of Afghanistan. For 20 years, we had a U.S. presence, and we could quell any kind of rebellion or uprising, or if we saw somebody getting out of line. That is not the case anymore. China set up a live fire exercise zone near Taiwan without warning. Taiwan detained a Chinese-linked cargo ship or because it severed undersea cables also, just like they were doing in the Baltic region. In the Middle East, Iran accelerated the production of nuclear-grade uranium, according to the IAEA. This is this is a result of tensions with growing tensions with the current administration and Iran. Now, Iran is struggling because these tensions have brought on new sanctions, and Iran is facing a growing crisis unless those sanctions are lifted. Sociologists are warning of uprising and economic crisis if they're not addressed. Lebanon and the government won a confidence vote and said that only armed forces should defend the country, not the militias that they've been seeing. The militias that are, a lot of them are headed by groups like Hezbollah. The EU has begun easing the Syrian energy, transportation, and banking sanctions to help revive its economy, which is interesting because the Syria is now run by a former Al Qaeda leader, and I thought Al Qaeda was our enemy, but you know, the last U.S. administration gave them their own country. Hamas and handed over bodies of 4 Israeli hostages, and Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. In Africa, suspected pirates abandoned ship off of Somalia. Uh, in Congo, 70 Christians were reportedly beheaded by an ISIS affiliate. In Sudan, the military is making advances to retake the capital. Sudan's been in a civil war for a couple of years now. The And in the conflict between Rwanda and Congo, the UK, excuse me, has suspended some financial aid to Rwanda over the violence. In the Americas, the Dow Jones Industrial Average ended at 43,840.91. The S&P was ended at 5,954.50, and the Nasdaq was at 18,847.28. Peru are seeing the some Ecuadorian gangs making their way into the Peruvian jungle. It is a largely uncontrolled area, so the gangs are trying to set up shop to move drugs and probably people as well. They're it's impacting the area uh, which is causing a concern for a lot of people. Uh, this past week, Chile saw a massive power outage that left the country in darkness for hours. Last week, I missed a story that I thought I should share, and that was that the New York National Guard was activated to help with a prison problem in Attica, New York. Corrections officers were protesting staffing shortages, long hours, uh, pay, and they wanted to reverse recent prison reforms, including rules on solitary confinement. They had took a what the governor was calling an illegal. Uh, they started conducting an illegal protest. The corrections officers did, and they a lot of them weren't showing up for work. This put a lot of pressure on them, so that caused the governor to activate the National Guard. In Las Cruces, New Mexico, what is called a prolific alien smuggling organization smuggled migrants from South and Central America into the U.S. Was busted. 14 individuals were indicted. In Mexico, those flights over southern United States and in Mexico seem to be paying off. Mexico deported 29 drug cartel figures to the U.S. As Mexicans met with the new administration's team. Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, uh, General C.Q. Brown, and Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, were removed from their positions late Friday. The new DNI, boy, talk about having to clean stuff up. The new DNI exposed an explicit chat and hookup site on the NSA's site. I guess instead of going to work and protecting the U.S. from spies, they were deciding who they could get together and hook up with. More than 100 intelligence officers were fired for sexually explicit chat in these messages. A whistleblower has noted that there is a trans cult inside the NSA. This week, also a former uh, um, Secret Service officer and a talk show host, Dan Bongino, was named as an assistant deputy FBI director, or assistant, a deputy. He was just a deputy FBI director, which I find very interesting. I'll make a note in a moment here. Additionally, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, was angered this week as she requested details on the Jeffrey Epstein files and got a few thousand pages, that most of which had already been released over the past several years. The flight logs don't really mean much. That doesn't tell us who Jeffrey Epstein's customers were. We need to know who those clients were and who are still in positions of power. The Attorney General immediately fired off a letter and demanded the remaining documents, videos, tapes, files that Epstein made over the years. There's got to be several 100,000, maybe millions of documents and videos that are available, and it sounds like that there is a big conflict brewing between the Attorney General and the Southern District of New York. Now, this seems to be a game to some people at the FBI. They wanted to be able to maintain leverage over those people and refuse to make this information public. This is why people like Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino and many others are put into places that they have been. They're hardworking, tireless, and will get the information exposed, I hope. These people have caused harm to children, to their victims, and were allowed to get away with it for years. And people who are holding leverage over them, well, they're able to get things passed that they uh, that they wanted, and that's not how our system works. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you guys are doing well. I hope things are going your way, and you're able to solve the problems that you have. And I please like, share, and subscribe. This is Jeff Rains with Foundation of Civilization. I'm signing off for this week, and hope that you guys are prepared for the changes that are coming to the world. Thanks again. Hug your loved ones, and you guys have a good week, and I'll see you all next time.